Hi, this is Matt Baker. On May the 6th, the world will witness something that has not happened in almost 70 years. This means that unless you're in your 70s, this is going to be something that you'll be seeing for the very first time. I'm, of course, referring to the coronation of King Charles III. Some elements of the ceremony are more than 1,000 years old, so unless you're a time traveler or an expert on royal history, you're probably going to have some questions on what exactly is happening and why. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you everything you need to know, such as the order of the service, who's attending, what this old chair is, and why you'll be seeing two crowns instead of just one. So let's start with who's attending and what their various roles will be. Obviously, King Charles will be the center of attention. But unlike the coronation of his late mother, this time there will be two people, a king and a queen, instead of only a queen. To explain why, let me introduce the terms monarch and consort. The monarch is the person who sits on the throne, and the consort is his or her spouse. When the monarch is a female, she is called a queen, but her spouse is not called a king. This is because the rank of king is generally understood to be higher than that of a queen. So, in Queen Elizabeth's case, her husband was known as Prince Philip, in order to indicate that she was the higher ranking person. However, when the monarch is a male, he is called a king, and his spouse is called a queen. So, basically, there are two types of queens. Queen Elizabeth was a queen regnant, meaning that she was the monarch, whereas Queen Camilla is a queen consort, meaning that she is simply the spouse of a monarch. So note that when Charles dies, Camilla, if she's still living, doesn't get to take over her husband's job. At that point, she would become the queen mother, or more accurately, the queen stepmother. And William, Prince of Wales, would become the new king, with his wife Catherine becoming the new queen. Now, in order to illustrate one last term involving queens, let's imagine a scenario in which William dies tragically. In this case, his eldest child, George, would become the new king. However, if George was still under the age of 18, he'd be appointed a temporary regent. This person could be someone like Prince Harry, but it also could be his mother, Catherine, in which case she'd be called the Queen Regent. Note that regent and regnant are two different words, even though they sound quite similar. Now, before I move on and tell you about the royal family tree and which members will be attending the coronation, let me first tell you about how you can build your own family tree, thanks to today's sponsor, MyHeritage. All you need to do is enter your parents' and grandparents' names, and MyHeritage will do the rest. Using their database of over 19 billion records, as well as the trees made by other users, MyHeritage will automatically give you discovery links that will allow you to grow your tree really fast. Using this method, I was able to grow my tree from just 7 people to over 100 in just one session. And even if you don't know your parents and grandparents, they can provide you with a DNA test to get you started. Once you've built your tree, you can print it using all sorts of great designs. And you can even animate the photos of your ancestors to see what they were like. To start your 14-day free trial, just click the link in the description or pinned comment. And as a Useful Charts viewer, enjoy 50% off a premium membership if you decide to continue. Okay, so at the coronation, we're going to have a king and a queen. Also in attendance will be the king's 2 sons, William, the Prince of Wales, and Harry, the Duke of Sussex. William's entire family will be there, but Harry's will not. Often forgotten are William and Harry's step-siblings, the children of Queen Camilla, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopez. They and their families will also be there. The king's disgraced younger brother, Andrew, the Duke of York, will be there. But he will not be participating in any sort of official capacity. And Andrew's former wife, Sarah, better known as Fergie, will not be there. However, her 2 daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, will attend. Also attending will be the king's youngest brother, Edward, the new Duke of Edinburgh, and his family, as well as the king's only sister, Princess Anne, and her family. Now, although the royal family is quite large, only a few of these people are considered to be working royals, and it's only the working royals that will take part in the official procession. This includes the King and Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, and Anne, the Princess Royal. However, there are a few other working royals from further out on the family tree that you might not be as familiar with. These three are all first cousins of the late Queen Elizabeth. They include Prince Richard and his wife, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, and Princess Alexandra, the Lady Ogilvy. In the United Kingdom, there is not only a royal family, there is also a nobility. Below the king and queen are dukes, then marquises, earls, which are the equivalent of counts, viscounts, and barons. All of these people are known as peers. Each rank has a certain style of coronet, which is basically a kind of mini crown. In the past, a coronation was often the only time that you would actually see all of the nobles wearing their coronets. For example, look at this photo from the late Queen's coronation. You can see that she is not the only one wearing a crown. All of those other people with crowns are the various dukes, earls, etc. However, at Charles III's coronation, you're not likely to see any coronets. First of all, Charles wants his coronation to be a little less fancy, so he's requested that peers wear regular clothes instead of robes and coronets. Second, he's only invited 20 peers, and instead has invited lots of representatives from various charities that the royal family supports. Another set of individuals I should mention are the great officers of state. These are positions that go way back to medieval times and today are mostly ceremonial. However, they play an important role at coronations, so let's have a look. The highest ranking person is the Lord High Steward. Nowadays, this office is normally vacant. However, it is temporarily filled for coronations because it is the Lord Steward who holds the crown before it is placed on the head of the monarch. The person who filled this role during the late Queen's coronation was the Viscount Andrew Brown Cunningham, who served as an admiral in the British Navy during World War II. Second comes the Lord Chancellor, who is usually a high-ranking cabinet member. Currently, that person is the Conservative MP Dominic Raab. Then, rather strangely, comes the Lord High Treasurer, which nowadays is always the Prime Minister. So currently, it is Rishi Sunak. I say strangely because the Prime Minister ordinarily outranks the Lord Chancellor. However, in terms of the great officers of state, the Lord Chancellor actually outranks the Prime Minister. Next is the Lord President of the Council, a position now always given to the leader of the House of Commons, currently Conservative MP Penny Mordaunt. Then there's the Lord Privy Seal. That position is now always given to the leader of the House of Lords, currently Lord Nicholas True. Then in sixth position is the Lord Great Chamberlain, currently Lord Rupert Carrington. This position is hereditary, but rotates between three noble families. Traditionally, the Lord Great Chamberlain plays an important role at coronations as the person who helps dress the monarch and serve him or her water. Finishing off the list is the Lord High Constable, the Earl Marshal, and the Lord High Admiral. Here, the only position that is currently filled is that of the Earl Marshal, also a hereditary position. It always belongs to the Duke of Norfolk, who is the highest-ranking non-royal duke in the English peerage. Currently, the Duke of Norfolk is Edward Fitzalan Howard. He'll actually be the most important person at the coronation other than King Charles, because it is the Duke of Norfolk who is in charge of planning and overseeing the entire event. Also playing a key role will be the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, the spiritual leader of the Anglican Church. He's the one who will preside over most of the service, and is the one who will place the crown on the king's head. Assisting him will be the Dean in charge of Westminster Abbey, Dr. David Hoyle. Okay, besides the royal family, peers, government officials, and religious leaders, there will also be several foreign heads of state in attendance. Among others, these will include the Emperor and Empress of Japan, the King and Queen of Spain, the King and Queen of the Netherlands, President Macron of France, and President Frank-Walter Steinmeier of Germany. The President of the United States, Joe Biden, will not attend. However, the First Lady, Jill Biden, will be there, representing the U.S. In total, there will be about 2,000 guests, which is quite a bit less than the 8,000 that attended the late Queen's coronation back in 1953. The 2,000 guests for the latest coronation have already received one of these. So if you haven't gotten one yet, you can safely assume that you're not on the list. Okay, let's now look at the order of service. The King and Queen will first of all proceed from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey, using the route shown on screen. They will travel in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach, which was built in 2012 to celebrate the late Queen's 60th year on the throne. Now, the reason why Westminster Abbey is used for coronations is that it was built by St. Edward the Confessor, the last King of England from its original royal house, the House of Wessex. He built it to serve as his royal burial place, and his tomb remains there to this very day. In 1066, shortly after Edward the Confessor's death, William the Conqueror defeated Harold Godwinson at the famous Battle of Hastings and became the new King of England. He decided to be crowned at Westminster Abbey, where Edward the Confessor was buried, in order to create a sense of continuity between himself and the earlier Anglo-Saxon kings. Ever since then, just about every monarch of England, and later Great Britain and the UK, has been crowned at Westminster Abbey. The only exceptions are Lady Jane Grey, who only reigned for 9 days, Edward V, who was one of the princes in the Tower who disappeared, and Edward VIII, who abdicated after less than a year. Once at Westminster Abbey, the actual coronation service will begin. Whereas the late Queen's coronation took about 3 hours, King Charles III's will be quite a bit shorter, probably around 1 hour. The ceremony itself will have 6 main parts. The first part is the recognition. If it follows the format used at the last coronation, the king will be presented to all those present 4 times, 1 for each of the points of the compass. After each presentation, the people will shout, "Long live the king."
Sir, I here present unto you Queen Elizabeth, your undoubted queen. Wherefore all you who are come this day to do your homage and service, are you willing to do the same?
The second part is the oath. Here, the king will be asked to swear on a Bible and take an oath that will probably go something like this. Do you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of all your other realms and territories, to any of them belonging or pertaining, according to their respective laws and customs? To which the king will presumably say, "I solemnly promise to so do." Then, because he is not only the king, but also the head of the Church of England, he will also be asked to swear an oath related to his role in this religious capacity. The exact wording of this oath will be interesting because Charles has said that he wants his coronation to be more ecumenical and to include a show of respect towards those of other religions. So we're not quite sure what the exact words will be. We do know that there will likely be several other religious leaders present, one confirmed attendee being Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, who holds the title Chief Rabbi of the United Hebrew Congregations of the Commonwealth. The third part of the service is the anointing. An anointing is a pouring or smearing of a special oil on someone and is a practice that goes back to ancient times. It may have originated with the Egyptians, but we know for sure that it was practiced by the ancient Israelites and then later by the early Christians. The earliest record we have of a priest anointing a king is the biblical story of Zadok the priest anointing King Solomon. This is why when King Charles is about to be anointed, you will hear a piece of music called Zadok the Priest, written by George Friedrich Handel. If you're a soccer fan, you'll probably recognize it because the official anthem of the UEFA Champions League is based on it. Now, at this point, I have to tell you a bit about this chair, because that's where Charles will sit when he is anointed. It's called either St. Edward's chair, after Edward the Confessor, or King Edward's chair, after King Edward I, who built it. In any case, this chair is 727 years old and has the nicks and graffiti to prove it, although most of the graffiti comes from the 1800s, when for some reason it wasn't guarded very well and a bunch of schoolboys and tourists carved their names into it. But the most interesting thing about King Edward's chair is that it was built so that a very special stone could be placed directly under the seat, the stone of Scone. Legend has it that this is the exact same stone that Jacob used as a pillow when he had a dream about a ladder going up to heaven, or that it was the stone of destiny used in ancient times by the Irish to crown their high kings. In reality, it actually matches a type of sandstone found near Scone in Scotland, where it was used for many years during the coronations of Scottish kings. Edward I, who claimed dominion over Scotland, stole the stone and built the coronation chair to house it. It was then used to coronate English monarchs until the point at which the line of Scottish monarchs merged with the line of English monarchs anyway, so that now it is once again used to anoint the person who reigns over Scotland. During the anointing, a canopy is placed over the chair so that the actual anointing is done in private. During this part, the monarch usually wears very simple, plain white clothes in order to symbolize their humility. The oil that will be used was made in Israel and was consecrated in Jerusalem by the Greek Orthodox Patriarch Theophilus III, as well as by the Palestinian Anglican Archbishop Hossam Naum. It will be poured from this container called an ampulla, which in this case is shaped like an eagle, so that the oil comes out of its beak. The fourth part of the ceremony is the most exciting. It's called the investiture, and this is when the crown is actually placed on Charles III's head. Now, I should make one thing clear. Charles III is already the king. He became king the moment his mother passed away. So the crowning doesn't actually make him the king. It's really just a symbolic gesture. And this is the crown that will be placed on his head, St. Edward's crown, again named after Edward the Confessor. It doesn't go all the way back to St. Edward, though. The original St. Edward's crown was destroyed during the English Civil War, so this one dates only to 1661, which was when the monarchy was restored. It was used by Charles II, James II, and William III, but then other crowns were used up until George V decided to use it again. And it's been the coronation crown ever since. However, take note that it's not actually the UK's best crown. It's estimated to be worth a mere $60 million, whereas this one, the Imperial State Crown, is worth a whopping $5 billion. The more fancy one, which also happens to be much lighter, will be worn by Charles at the end of the ceremony. But the crown is not the only thing that Charles will be given during this part of the ceremony. He will also be given these two scepters. The one with the cross, which houses the largest clear-cut diamond in the world, the Cullinan I, represents his authority over the state, whereas the one with the dove represents his authority over the church. He will also be given this golden orb, which represents the idea that his power on earth is given to him by God. He'll also get this ring, these two bracelets, known as the bracelets of sincerity and wisdom, these spurs, and this sword, known as the sword of mercy, because it has a dull point. Moving along, part 5 will be the enthronement. Now, note that King Edward's chair is not a throne. That's why it's called King Edward's chair and not King Edward's throne. The throne will actually be a different chair, and it will be placed on a raised platform, because that's what a throne is. By definition, it's an elevated chair. So that's why we say that a person ascends to the throne. In other words, they go up to it. So at this point, King Charles will literally ascend to the throne. Finally, while sitting on the throne, the last part of the ceremony will occur, the homage. In previous ceremonies, this is when each peer would individually come up and bow down to the new monarch. But Charles is going to do away with this part. Well, mostly. The plan is for his son William, who is the Prince of Wales, as well as the first person in the line of succession, to pay homage on behalf of everyone. You'll also see the second person in the line of succession throughout the service as well. That's William's eldest son, Prince George, who will be serving as one of the page boys, along with 3 of Camilla's grandsons and 4 other boys. Now, that takes care of the main parts of the coronation, but there's still one more bonus part to the ceremony, which, like I said, was not seen last time. In fact, except for a few people in their 90s, no one alive today has ever seen this part because it hasn't happened since 1937. That's the coronation of the Queen Consort. So, yeah, Camilla will be getting a crown too. Now, earlier there was some concern about this because last time a Queen Consort was crowned, it was with this crown, which includes a very controversial diamond on the front, known as the Kohinoor diamond. Over the years, it has belonged to the Mughal emperors of India, as well as the Persian conqueror Nadir Shah, the Afghan emir Ahmad Durrani, and the Sikh Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So currently there's a dispute between the UK, India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan over who should own it. Fortunately, Camilla avoided the controversy by deciding to wear this crown instead, the crown of Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, Queen Mary. It too used to contain the Kohinoor, but will now instead include 3 of the other Cullinan diamonds. Okay, once Charles and Camilla have both been crowned, there will be another procession back to Buckingham Palace. This one will retrace the same route that was used earlier, but will be much more spectacular. Around 6,000 military personnel will be involved, although again, this is less than during the late Queen's coronation. She had around 16,000. And on the return journey, the King and Queen will ride in a different coach. At this point, they will use the Gold State Coach. It's over 250 years old, weighs 4 tons, and cost about $4 million in today's money to build. Rumor has it that it's extremely uncomfortable to ride in, though, so it will proceed very slowly. One of the last highlights of the day will be the royal family's appearance on the Buckingham Palace balcony. At this point, you will once again only see the 11 working members of the royal family that I mentioned earlier, as well as Princess Anne's husband, the 3 Wales children, and the 2 Edinburgh children. So 17 in total. Now, before I go, let me remind you of one last detail. This will not be the first coronation that King Charles has attended. He was actually present at his mother's coronation when he was only 4 years old. He seemed a bit bored that time, so here's hoping that he'll enjoy this one just a little bit more. Thanks for watching.